Hey girl, hey! I am Jamia Ponder, host and creator of The Mrs. Beside, a safe space dedicated to the real ones standing beside and never behind. Girl, this life ain't no joke. It's time, let's air it all out. Trust me, I understand. Whoo child, I know it's a lot. Hey girl, hey. All right, welcome back to the Mrs. Beside. Today we have the beautiful Mrs. Brittanie Hazzard-Bigby with us today. And I'm super excited because this is a little change from what we've had sort of going for the entire year. We've had a wife that has been a spouse of somebody, well, mostly it's been physicians, right? But now Brittanie, she's not only married, but she's also in medicine. So it's like a little change from the norm. But I think it's crazy because there's still common threads among women. I don't care, what your thing is, there's still some common thread as women and wives and moms. And so I'm really excited and happy and honored to have Brittanie here with me today. So thank you for hanging out with me today, Brittanie.
Thanks for having me, Jamia. I'm excited to talk talk with you, not about you. Talk with you too today.
Don't be talking about me. No, I'm just playing. I know what you meant. So why don't you introduce yourself to us, and then we'll get to chatting.
Sure. So my name is Brittanie. I am a fourth year medical student. So here very soon, pending coronavirus delays, I will be officially Dr. Hazzard-Bigby.
Yes!
I've been married for 5 years, August 22nd, and I don't consider myself a jack of all trades, but I like adventure. And so I'm into a lot of different things. But of course, right now, priorities are marriage and medicine for me.
Yeah, I get that. So I want to kind of tell everybody how we met a little bit because it's interesting. So though I was never in med school, I found myself fully immersed among the med students. So in fact, I think some people thought that I legit went there.
Right? I would agree. Definitely, you were studying before we were.
Okay. So. Yeah. Well, so the thing is I had stuff to do, but so anyway, we met each other when we were living in Dominica and have, sort of remained connected online, which is cool. So we see things about each other and she's able to keep up with our kids and all that good stuff. So when she said she wouldn't mind being interviewed today, I was like, yay! I'm happy to have you here. So your story is unique because, you're in medicine, you're married, but I didn't know you were married when we were in Dominica, and that was well inside of 5 years. So how did that come about? Because your husband's an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. So my husband's name is Justin. So Justin and I met, I guess it was 2 years before I started med school. And fun fact, Justin decided that he was going to marry me the first date. But anyways, we won't go down that road.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we got to that crossroad in our relationship, the decision was basically, do we get married before I go to med school or do we get married after I go to med school? And a lot of well-intentioned people, of course, encouraged us to wait through med school because it's a life change, right? When we went to premarital counseling, the first thing they said was 2 things you don't do the first year of marriage: have a career change and move. I was doing both.
Right.
So we obviously decided to get married before, and he didn't come with me to the island. He stayed home because he does own his own trucking business in Houston. And so while, medical school tuition was paid for by the U.S. Department of Education, many med students will tell you that it still is a financial burden. And so we just couldn't afford for him not to be working.
Right.
That's just not our story. So Justin stayed back in Houston. We saw each other on the breaks. So that was like every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just been kind of rolling through these last 4 years. It's been a journey, to
Mm-hmm.
say the least. So Justin actually does not come from a degreed background. So Justin decided quite early on after high school he was going to be an entrepreneur. School was just not for him, and he's done really well. Not going past high school actually, and so it was a big jump because he didn't necessarily understand the intricacies of like just medicine, right? Like an advanced degree, unless you have one, you don't really understand just the commitment and
Mm-hmm.
the ups and the downs. Like people think they understand because their friend or their sister has an advanced degree, but it is an internal battle as much as it is a outward struggle to just get to the end, right? But to get
Yeah.
to the flourishing and thriving is a whole nother beast. And so it was rough at first. Like Justin was like, "You're still studying?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm still
Right.
studying." But after about the first year, he really started to understand and like be like, "I see what you're doing, babe. I support you." And really and truly, if I'm honest, the only reason I've made it this far is because of my grandmother's prayers, my mom's prayers, and my husband's support. Without the three of them, I would probably not be looking at the end of medical school and becoming a physician.
Yeah. And it does require that, right? It requires a lot of understanding because we don't know. And so I can only imagine the additional not knowing when you don't see somebody doing that every day, right? And they're in a different country,
Right.
on a whole different schedule and all of that. So what were, and still are, right? Because you guys are still not together.
We're
You're not
still
living
not,
in the same city.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've been long distance the majority of our marriage.
Right. So I mean, I know that you guys have adjusted to it over time, but I know when we had those periods of separation, it was incredibly difficult. Now we had a different layer of complexity to our situation having children, but
Right.
I know that I used to joke, but I wasn't really joking. I would be like, you only have one mouth to feed, one behind to wash, one person to take care of. And I'm over here moving for four people. So
Right.
how does that, what types of challenges were presented in living? You guys have never really lived in the same house.
Right. Right. A lot of challenges. So we were fortunate while, we had to finance my medical education. We were fortunate to be able to live with his family. And so his uncle allowed us to stay because his family also supports my dream a lot. And so he lived with his family while I moved all across the world, seemed like.
Mm,
So one of the challenges, a lot of the challenges was often just getting me to wherever I was going. So people will tell you, people who know us very well, whenever I go somewhere, like when I travel, no matter where it is and what the purpose is for, they're anticipating a story. I have a story for every travel experience I've gone on. Going to Dominica was no different. Like we get to the airport, they tell me my suitcase is too big.
oh dear.
I missed my flight. Um, and then just even getting back. So we were actually, after I finished on the island, we took a honeymoon. We didn't get to take a honeymoon because like we literally got married and I went to med school. And so after I finished on the island, we went on a honeymoon. And I don't know if people remember, but that week that we take our second year exam, they were talking about Harvey in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And the morning of our exam, they were anticipating Harvey was going to hit. Matter of fact, administration emailed us and was like, hell or high water, we expect to see y'all in the exam room tomorrow.
Right.
And it didn't hit. And so we jet setted to St. Lucia, didn't think anything else about Harvey. But I've traveled enough to the Caribbean to know before you leave, you might want to check the weather because they'll cancel your flight for anything.
Yeah.
So we look at the weather, Jamia, and Harvey is headed straight for Houston. I was like, okay. So all we could do was pray, like, Lord, just let us get back to Houston. Let us get back to Houston. And we ended up being on the last flight into Houston before Harvey hit.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, literally every time I've moved, it's been an experience. And so that's been a struggle. But distance is hard anyway. I will say that when we started, Justin struggled a little bit more. I was an only child for almost 10 years. My nearest family member besides my parents were 8 hours away. So I was accustomed to distance, but Justin grew up like with his cousins across the street.
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit of an adjustment for me to be sensitive to that, because I would be okay with like a good morning and a good night. That was not okay for Justin. Like, Justin needed to know, and he's a protector and a provider by nature. And even though I'm like, she woman, hear me roar, Justin was like, I need to know you're okay.
Where you're at. Hello?
Like,
did you say something?
I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I'm a whole adult. I've been taking care of myself for a lot of years that I'm not going to tell y'all.
And he's like, not the point.
But Justin was like, but at the altar, I stood in front of God and your family and said, I would take care of you. And I can't do that if you're not letting me know, like, are you okay? And if you're not okay, what can I do? But now here we are at the end of the journey. And since I've moved back to the States, it's been a lot easier because we can see each other like every 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
As opposed to every quarter. But now I find myself like having to get myself together before he leaves or before I leave. It's mostly before he leaves because, med school, they don't respect holidays, family time, none of that. So
I was going to say, not just med school, medicine. So
You're right. Medicine is 24/7, no days off. And so before he leaves, I find myself like struggling because I'm like, I just don't want him to go. I'm like so over the separation and, 5 years, like the first 5 years are supposed to be all of this adventure and you're getting to know your spouse. And I will say, I feel like, I tell my friends all the time, I feel like because we've been separated, we automatically get 20 years extra on top because anybody who can survive long distance, that's a whole nother challenge. Now, I know there are people who are like, I would love to be long distance from my husband, like sign me up. But honestly,
that's not true.
It's not for the weak. It's not all that excitement. Like, yeah, you can go out and nobody's going to ask you questions, or you can go with your friends and not have to think about like what plans he has or whatever. But at the end of the day, for me and my love language, I want him to have plans with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny though, because it's been a change. And the challenges have kind of shifted as the years have gone.
Yeah. And I think it's one thing when you talk about 4 years of something to say, okay, yes, I signed up for this thing, but you could have never imagined the journey that the two of you would have taken, like to get to today, If somebody had told me at the beginning, right. Like, okay, here's what you would have to do, sweet lamb, and all the things that were lined up, I'd have been like, D, no, thank you. Okay, no, thank you. I don't want to do that.
And the funny part is, so I did not have like a super straight and narrow path through medical school.
Right.
I had my own special challenges and I ended up having to transfer institutions and things like that. And even in that moment, I think I personally probably would have said, D, no, thank you, if somebody had told me what it would take to get here. But I will say in the worst of times, for me personally, in my own medical school journey, the brightest light was being able to see my husband say, like, I know this is challenging and I know that people are suggesting you're not capable, but I believe in you. And I'm like, okay, but you're supposed to say that. And it took me a while.
Wait, time out. Nobody is he would, if he didn't say that, you'd be like, are you serious? You're supposed to say, I support you through anything. Look, you're just ungrateful.
Listen, and the truth of the matter is my husband does not say anything he does not mean. Whether joking or not, he meant it. So, but I did. I had to check myself and be like, number one, I don't think anybody who didn't really care and love you would sign up for this madness. Like literally on the first time I talked to him, Jamia, I told him, don't fall in love with me. I'm going to med school. And he was like, I thought you were kidding. I said, was I kidding? He said, no. But even if you weren't kidding, I was willing to take that chance. So here we are.
Yeah, that's love. And I want to check in with you like in another 2 years when you guys are actually under the same roof, because you are so used to, you've kind of gotten into this groove of things like separately. So to have to combine that in one space is going to require, and it's going to have like a new set of challenges. So yeah, we'll check in a couple of years. I'll be like, so how's it going? Is everything fine? We'll be like, this Jogi.
Listen, it's a date. It's a date. Even in like the little time we get to spend with each other. Again, when I was on the island, it was like a week or two, and then it was back to the island. But now that we're here, and the biggest blessing for me in coronavirus has been like Justin can't really do much work. It picked up, but because I'm from Texas, I'm from Houston, and so Texas is wide open.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't go quite as they expected. All medical professionals expected just what happened to happen.
Right.
And so now they're kind of shutting back down. So he hasn't been able to work as much. And so we've been spending a little more elongated time together.
Yeah.
And even in that time, I'd be like, that doesn't go there. Why did you do that like that? Why are you, can you please do this?
Don't say nothing. Just let him be his best self.
Listen.
Just let him be his best self. So what I heard you say, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that in marriage, being married, and our anniversary is in August too, but communication is so key. And so it's like, you got to be almost even the more clear when you are apart, because you don't have some of the body language to help you out. You don't have the physical, you're not in close proximity with them when it is time to sort of fix and mend those things. So it's like, you got to be like extra clear in your communication, right?
Yes, listen, they tell you relationships, regardless of the style of relationship, requires good communication. But when you're separated and, people are like, well, you have FaceTime and all of that, but every moment is not a FaceTimeable moment, mm-hmm. right? And again, I was an only child for almost 10 years. And so there's very few times that I think I'm wrong. And so I'm like, that's not right. And he's like, but I have a side to my story. And I'm like, yeah, but this part of your story, I don't like it. And
she's like, you need to take that out.
Yeah, like that's not how this works. And so in the beginning, again, so I watch Married at First Sight because I'm obsessed with human behavior. Like my master's is in human health promotion and behavior science. I love human behavior. And one of the, I can't remember if it was the expert. No, it was one of the contestants. Well, I guess it's not a game show, but you know what I mean. One of the pairs, she was an only child, and she said something that stuck with me. She said, I never had to be sensitive to someone else's feelings.
Yeah.
And that was my story. Like by the time I went to to college, my little sister was just going into elementary school. So we literally were raised almost like two only children.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn quickly to be sensitive to his feelings, because I think I was the one in the midst of the situation, but I had to also realize that he was going through it with me, even though he wasn't the one physically there. And so sometimes my communication was a little bit entitled, like I'm the one out here struggling, as though the support system isn't struggling just as much. And again, because he doesn't come from a place where you study for 20 hours every day, it was really hard for him. And so by year 2, I got it together and really learned how to communicate. But the other thing that really helped us is Justin learning what the journey is supposed to look like. And I say supposed because things change, but
Mhm.
just understanding like what's the difference between basic science and clinical science, right? Like it's a whole different set of rules when I'm in the hospital or when I'm in clinic or whatever. And so Justin would find ways to do those things that matter, to speak my love language, but still respect all the rules and regulations, so to speak, of the different parts of medicine. And I was sharing with some of my friends, like Justin's already asked me about residency. Like, how does
Yeah.
it work? What's your schedule like? Is it okay if I bring you lunch? Like, is it okay if I come and have lunch with you in the cafeteria? Like, is that allowed? Are you able to do that? Because he's already thinking about how do I make sure that my wife always knows that I support her and I'm going to protect and provide for her no matter how much her schedule or responsibilities change. So
Yeah. And I think that's super important to understand the other person's side of things, because I think that was one of the main things that drove me to finding out all this information. Now, I'm type A anyway, so it probably wasn't like a super difficult task in terms of, or outside of, the realm of things that I would want to know. And because Desmond didn't always have the answers for me, like I would seek out the information. So I'm like, yeah, anyway, by the time we got to year 2, I was like, so this is what your schedule is. Like, so this is what's about to look like. And, I've heard from other people that when you go into year 3, like we're really going to have to be on top of things, because we don't know what the attending is going to be like at the hospital. And, you're going to be under certain stressors. You got to perform. You got shelf exams coming up. And he's like, how do you know all of this? You don't worry about all that. What I'm asking you for, so it's like, but to be able to have that background knowledge, to your point, is very beneficial in helping the support system understand what that looks like and still being able to have our needs met. Because it's one thing to consistently pour out, but it's exhausting when it's not reciprocated. And so
right.
even at some degree, like it's got to be scalable. And I always used to say like, okay, well, if you don't make a habit of prioritizing me, it won't just magically manifest, right?
Right.
It's never going to happen. You have to make a practice of doing those things in the small cracks and crevices that you do have, so that when you do have more time, it's not a foreign idea. It's not a foreign concept. So I love that he was asking the questions, to try to be more aware and like, okay, maybe I'm missing something. I got to be missing something, because there's no way you have to study again. You literally just put the book down. Like if I have to hear you say, I got to study one more time, I'm just going to hang up.
Right, right. And of course, as you know, Jamia, I too am like type A and into all these things. And so I'm also a leader in medicine. And so compounding that with the rigors of just being a student, Justin would be like, if you're not studying, it's a call. If it's not a call, it's something else. Like, why? What are we doing? Like, what is the purpose? And so we even had to have a conversation about like, why do you want to be in this organization? Why do you want to be a leader in this organization? What do you see you're getting from it? Because Justin also knows that I struggle with saying no to things that I think I can make a difference in, even if it's at the expense of my own health and sanity.
Yeah.
I will say with age comes wisdom. And so I've gotten better at it. But early on, when I wanted to be this president and this whatever, Justin was like, okay, I just want to know why. Just tell me why you want to do it and what do you hope to gain? And then we can sit down and say, like, do you really think that makes the most sense for you? And if the answer was no, then it was like, okay, how can I be, a support to whatever this cause is without actually being in charge of this cause?
Right.
Because again, like you said, if you don't prioritize now when it's all haywire, it's not going to just magically appear. You're actually just going to find yourself spiraling into more things and more responsibilities. And you're going to look up and, divorce rate is high in medicine. And that's something I never want to be a part of our story. And I feel like if it were, it would be because I was unable to just say no and make things priority. And like I started with, marriage and medicine have been my priorities for now.
Yeah.
Because it's the two things that are of most importance.
Yeah, but you are right. If you do not ever if you don't make those connectivities, and the fact that there is such a high divorce rate in medicine, and you compound the fact that you guys are literally not living in the same state, at times not living in the same country, if you're not crystal clear with those communications and like actively seeking to invest in your marriage, then like even if you do reconnect, like what are you coming back to? A hot mess.
Yeah, and a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of walls. And I've seen my friends who started out married and are no longer married, and in different industries.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I can't actually recall any of it being about entanglements.
I'm screaming.
A lot of
it's really sad. The memes were awful, but that whole thing was really sad. But anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. It was really sad, especially from the married perspective. But a lot of them have said like it kind of all fell apart because they just were focused on their own thing for so long. When they came back to each other, there was nothing. Like you're literally starting over. But you're starting from a very different place, right? Because as life goes, you grow. And so they're literally succeeding at growing apart. And I was just like, I can't see that for me and Justin. So I have to make decisions. And again, communication is key. And just saying like right now, I have stuff coming up soon. And so like, I just told Justin like, hey, this is my time. My exam is going to be on this date. So if I'm not able to speak to you or I'm not able to answer you as quickly as you like, and it's not an emergency, please don't be upset. I just need these next couple of months to get through this exam.
Yeah.
The first time I took step, well, not the first time I took step, but when I took my first step exam, I only took it once. When I took my first step exam, I didn't do that. And so Justin was like, so when is this test again? But because that was difficult to go through, I knew this time I'd have to set a date and let him know, like, this is why I'm unavailable. And it's worked out for us.
Yeah. And I think that it's super important to, one, remain cognizant of that. Because if you're aware of something, you can make necessary adjustments. I think when you become oblivious to something, you're just like, oh, I'm in med school, boy. What's wrong with you? Like, I'm not asking for a whole lot. I'm just asking you to leave me alone.
Right.
So yeah, I think being cognizant of that is important. And then not only that, but like I always told Desmond, okay, he'd probably be like, you're getting on my nerves. But I'm like, no, because we need to talk about this because I just want to make sure that, you're aware and that I'm aware, because it doesn't make it easier. I think that it just gives you like, a closer spot to sort of come back to. Like, okay, when we talked about this on November 3rd at approximately 1:48 in the afternoon, I said, but I always wanted to make sure that we were growing. You're going to change as people as you get older, right? You should. If you're the same person that you were when you were 18, you got a bigger problem. Get you some help. Okay. Get you some professional help and people with some letters behind their name. But, as you grow, you should become different people. But my thing was, I always wanted to make sure that we were growing together and not apart. Because, like our kids are getting bigger and our life is changing. And it's like, I felt like if we could get through some of the harder pieces, that, there was like a little glimmer of light, like it was a pin dot worth of light that I could see, in the far, far distance, but it was getting closer. And if I wasn't intentional about talking about certain things, not that I always hit the nail on the head, but at least if I'm aware of it, I can make adjustments to talk about these things. And so when you got somebody who's willing to rock with you, it works.
It does.
You don't have to be perfect, but you do need to be purposeful. So I think that's awesome. I did want to ask you about this beauty consultant thing that you have going, because, it's one of the areas I'm seeking to grow in. Um, not necessarily as a business, but just making sure, I try to put me on a little piece of mascara or something, every day, a little something. But tell us about that.
Yeah, so a year ago, actually, the year flew by, but a year ago, I partnered with a company called Beautycounter. So Beautycounter was actually started, our CEO, Greg, she started it after her nanny got breast cancer. And her nanny, there was no, she had no risk factors other than she was a woman to get breast cancer. Like it was completely just random that she got breast cancer. And so, as she was going through that battle, she decided to take a closer look at her personal care products. So, personal care like skincare, makeup, lotion, shampoo, conditioner, all that stuff.
Mhm.
And she noticed that a lot of our personal care products, especially those marketed to women, contain a lot of toxins and known carcinogens and hormone disruptors and all of that. And so she decided to take action and she came up with this company called Beautycounter. And so Beautycounter, the idea is that we counter the norm, right? And so our goal is to get clean products into the hands of everyone. And so for me, as a person who's very interested in women's health and making sure that we protect our women and children, I wholeheartedly believe that a society does not thrive if its women and children are not healthy. And so for me, this company presented a perfect opportunity. Like I said, medicine is not cheap.
Mm-mm.
Medical education is not cheap. And unfortunately, even if we look at like how coronavirus is impacting healthcare right now, doctors are not guaranteed anything except a degree if you finish all your course requirements.
Right.
And so, in the face of just understanding that if you don't create your own dream, you're going to build someone else's for them. I decided I didn't want to do that. I decided that I wanted to, number one, promote a statement that I think especially women of color need to hear. So most people don't know, but 60% of the products that are marketed to women of color contain harmful chemicals. And we put this on our face, we put this on our kids, we put this in our hair all the time. And people say, well, it's just a little bit, but a little bit over a long time is enough to cause serious problems, though fertility problems, potential cancer, all of that. And so I thought if I could use my voice to amplify this message and at the same time build some income for myself, then I have the best of both worlds. So over the last year, I've been working with Beautycounter. The thing I love the most, there's two things I love about it. Number one is just the tribe of women. There are men who also work and partner with us, but the tribe of women who come together to support each other is phenomenal. And number two, the makeup doesn't require me to be an expert. So, like you, Jamia, I be trying to put on a little mascara, a little eyebrows. Somebody reminded me. So we have this thing called Flawless in 5, and the idea is you can do your makeup in 5 minutes. Now, I'm not an expert, so it takes me about 10 to 12 minutes, but it's quick, easy, nice, simple look. And if you want to glam it up, you can. But for the girl that's looking for that everyday look, it's perfect. And so I did a little promo for it, I guess like a week or so ago. And one of my friends reminded me of the time when I used to do my eyebrows and put on lip gloss and be like, girl, I did my makeup today. And I was like, first of all, why do you remember that? And secondly, let me be great. Yeah, so that's Beautycounter. I love being a part of it. And I'll have to send you, we'll have to talk later and see what your skin type is. And I'll have to send you some samples so you can try it. And as a person who struggled with my skin, like my skin absolutely does not like me. I've decided if I don't eat right, if I don't drink enough water, it tells on me. It's just not, it's not friendly to me. And I did like the Proactive and the Accutane. I did all the things that people do to like clear up their skin, and it didn't last. But with the Beautycounter skincare line, I've seen phenomenal results just in the last year. So really excited to be partnered with them and to be making a little bit of income so that, I don't have to be 60 years old working, trying to pay down my student loans.
Valid. So I know like there are some people that are listening that are like, you lost me because I don't do the what is it, MLM tiers thing or whatever. But I'll definitely take the samples. I'm still trying to learn about like, how to really do makeup. I'm not an artist at all. So I'll put a little eyeshadow on, I'll throw a little lip on, but I like my mom be like, don't you get a little pressed pout? I'm like, ma'am, I really don't. So anyway, yes, let's talk about getting some samples. Yeah. So I'll have you give us, and of course they'll be listed in the show notes, like where they can find you if they want some more information about it. So I told you that this question was coming before we started this. So here it is. And I've been asking this, and as the last formal guest for season 1, which I'm so excited about, y'all. Like, this has been, as a side note, this has been like an amazing little journey for me, and very, very healing, very fulfilling, and a chance to connect through all this COVID stuff that's been going on, because I feel like I haven't been able to see people anyway. It's been really nice. And so I'm super glad and super humbled for everybody that's contributed this season, but having you wrap up the season has been pretty cool. So anyway, the question is, what does the Mrs. Beside mean to you?
So before I answer, I will say I am so proud of you, Jamia. I don't know why I'm actually getting emotional right now, but
okay, let's not do this. Let's not do that.
But I really am. So I remember when you and Desmond came to the island with the kids, and I mean, honestly, I was just really excited to see like a Black family, to be completely honest. Because a lot of people, we had a couple in our class. Mm-hmm. So I was like what, a semester or so ahead of Desmond. Mm-hmm. And we had a couple in our class, but the mom, the wife, she was also the medical student. But to see you and the kids like supporting Desmond 110% always warmed my little heart. And of course, we all love to see all the personality of your kids.
Help us out.
Listen, we loved it. We needed it. And so watching you grow has been incredible. And I'm so glad that you had the courage to launch this as the Mrs. Beside, because you said something that I don't think people think about. Like, as women, we take care of everybody. Mm-hmm. And even as a med student, like, I still find myself trying to take care of everybody and everything, right? Like, in the academic world, it's Brittanie and Justin. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, it's Justin and Brittanie. And I love that. Like, if I didn't want that, I wouldn't have got married.
Right.
But for me, watching you soar as the Mrs. Beside, I think that number one, it does two things for me. Number one, it states a claim. Like, in this new age, I think people, whether you believe in gender roles or whatever, it's not the point. I think sometimes people suggest that being the Mrs. Beside makes you somehow less than. Mm-hmm. And they try to make it seem like you don't have these skills or whatever. Like, we, as successful women who are also wives, sometimes, we still live in a society that values men more. And so for you to say, like, I am the Mrs. Beside, but here's what I'm doing. Here's my platform. Like, look at me. I am doing this. It reminds us as women it's okay to take care of your friends, your family, whatever, but you also have amazing capabilities, and you also have a skill set that the world needs to see and to hear. And so as much as like, I was so excited to come and share, because we're wives and we're successful, but we are opposite roles. So you're the spouse and I'm the student, which is different for us. I was really excited to just get to sit down and talk about it, because like you said at the beginning, we share so much. It's such a common thread that's woven throughout. Like, medicine is something I do, but being a wife is part of who I am. And so I applaud you. I think the Mrs. Beside, I'm so excited to see how it just transforms lives. I think that women will really be able to gravitate and relate to your platform. I do. And again, like I said, in my everyday life, it's Brittanie and Justin, but in the real world, it's Justin and Brittanie. So I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Now, don't you start.
I don't want to do this with you today. No, I really appreciate that. And, I'm going to read my why statement. I think it's really important for the close of season 1. I struggled a little bit with even developing it. It's like, I know what I want to do. I don't have the answers, but I'm like, girl, just take my hand. Like we can walk with each other. But my why statement is to encourage women to put themselves on their to-do list in order to realize that they too can be fulfilled. And so it's like, that's what I'm here for. Like I know stuff exists, right? There's a to-do list to be done, but sis, are you on it?
Yeah.
Like, are you on it? Because you should be. You should be. Like, you are integral in everything that happens surrounding you. And, they call in the old days, they used to call moms the cornerstone, mm-hmm. But it's true.
Yeah.
Legit true. Just the glue that kind of keeps everything together. But if you are cracked and you are unfulfilled, you are weak, you cannot pour from an empty cup. It's impossible. And really nobody's going to care for you in the way that you can. Right. So anyway, I love and appreciate that so much. And yeah, this is about to be a crazy ride. I'm like, God, what are you doing? What are we about to do? Because you know what? Don't even tell me, because I don't even want to know.
And he's not going to, because if he tells you, then you might be too scared to keep moving.
I would say D.
No thanks.
No thank you.
And I just want you to know, it's not what are you going to do, it's what you are doing. I'm just incredibly proud of you, and you are doing it, and you're doing it well. I know it's not easy. I don't have kids. I only have a fur baby, but you do it so well, and you do it with such grace and poise. So don't say, what are we going to do? Because baby, you are already doing it.
Okay, well, we're going to close out for today because Brittanie is not going to continue to wreck my life. So y'all, I have enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And until next time, y'all stay great. Remember that I'm proud of you. I'm here for you. I will forever be in your corner to encourage you. And I love you. And in case nobody's told you today, you look good, girl. Are you losing weight? You're looking real good. Until next time, love y'all. Talk to you soon. Bye.